Welcome back. Alabama and Tennessee, those two teams have a rich rivalry between those two. And tomorrow, they're going to battle it out on the gridiron at Bryant-Denny Stadium. And here to tell us more about that is our very own WVUA Sports Director, Gary Harris. Hey.
Hey, Janie, these are kind of two ships passing in the night, it would seem. You know, programs headed in different directions. Alabama is #2 in the country, undefeated, possibly in position to win a second national championship in the last 3 years. Tennessee, meanwhile, is 3-3. Got hammered last week at home by LSU. Since they've gotten into conference play, they have really struggled. But it is Alabama versus Tennessee. And, you know, when you have these great rivalry games, you can sometimes throw the record books out the window. Certainly the case 2 years ago. Tennessee wasn't as big an underdog 2 years ago as they are this year, but they were still a big underdog. They came into Bryant-Denny Stadium, and Alabama had to block not one but 2 field goals to preserve a 2-point victory and keep their undefeated season alive. Last year in Knoxville, we're looking at some highlights from that right now, Alabama handled Tennessee rather easily, but didn't really get away from Tennessee until the second half. Now, in some places, I've seen Alabama as much as a 30-point favorite, anywhere between about 27.5 and 30 points. So that's a huge number. You just don't expect to see a rivalry game like this where one team is that big a favorite. But when you look at the two football teams, Alabama's average margin of victory so far is 33 points. They're only giving up 7 points a game. In 7 games, they've given up 49 total points. Last week against Ole Miss, they scored more points than that in 1 game. So their average margin of victory is 33 points. They're giving up 7 points a game. Tennessee, as I said, is struggling as of late. So certainly Alabama, barring something unforeseen, just like we said going into the Ole Miss game last week, unless Alabama helps Tennessee out. What I mean by that is has a meltdown where they turn the ball over a bunch, or something happens in the kicking game, or some strange plays happen. Alabama should win this game on Saturday evening at Bryant-Denny Stadium.
They're just a powerhouse.
Well, right now they are, I mean, I think they're playing certainly as well as anybody in the country. But as we've seen before, when you're in the Southeastern Conference, you're only as good as your last game. And, there are teams, including Tennessee, that if Alabama has an off night, they could take advantage and be in the football game. If you're Tennessee, what you want to do with Sims at quarterback, Bray's out, with Sims at quarterback, they want to try to run the football. They ran it better last week against LSU. Shorten the game, run clock, keep Alabama's offense off the field, and just somehow try to get it into a second half football game. Again, 2 years ago, they were able to do that. They hung around. Then late in the game when Alabama was trying to put it away, Mark Ingram fumbled. They scored a touchdown a few plays later, and then wound up with a chance to win the football game. So that's what they're going to try to do. They're going to just try to hang around and give themselves a chance. But, it's probably more dependent on what Alabama does than what Tennessee does, because if Alabama plays well, they're better.
Absolutely. They're just going to roll over them, as expected.
Yeah, and that's what Bama fans are hoping for sure, because after this game, you get the bye week, and then you get LSU in 2 weeks. But that's a whole different story. We'll be talking more about that. Some other games of note in the SEC. It's kind of other than this game and the Auburn-LSU game, it's kind of an off week in terms of big games. But Auburn is at LSU without the 3 suspended players. So that game could be a little more interesting than first thought. And we know one thing about Auburn. If it's close, they can beat you. So LSU's probably hoping to jump on them in a hurry. Another game of some interest, Arkansas goes to Ole Miss. The Rebels, Houston Nutt has lost 9 conference games in a row, so they're fighting for their lives, and Houston Nutt may be fighting for his job. Arkansas is a 16-point favorite there. Vanderbilt hosts Army up in Nashville, then a game involving Kentucky outside of the SEC, but it does have some interest in state here. Jacksonville State travels to Kentucky. Remember last year Jacksonville State went to Ole Miss and won. So what if they were to knock off 2 SEC teams in back-to-back years? That would be huge for them, and Kentucky has been struggling. On the national scene, the big game is Wisconsin at Michigan State in the Big Ten. Of course, tonight we've got high school football. Football Friday coming up at 10:35, right after our news at 10. Huge game tonight. One of the biggest games we've ever covered. Northridge in Hillcrest for the Class 6A Region 5 Championship. Both teams are undefeated, and it is just going to be a gigantic game. We're going to have mega blowout coverage of that game, plus a bunch of other games as well. Then in the morning, I want to remind folks, and I know you'll mention it too, but Crimson Tide kickoff at 8 a.m. live from the UA campus, presented by Alpha Insurance. Bob Kessling, the voice of the Tennessee Vols, will join us. Also, Izzy Gould, beat writer for AL.com for the Mobile and Birmingham newspapers. He'll be with us as well. Deontay Wilder, the heavyweight boxer, former Olympic bronze medalist, will be our guest picker. So big weekend of football, and we've got it covered for you.
Absolutely, and this is the place to be. No better place, no better coverage than right here. WVUA with Gary Harris and John Huddleston, Todd Hoyer. They got you covered, high school to college. But no better place to be. Thanks so much for being with me, Gary.
Thank you.
Enjoyed having you here.